Here are 25 mind-blowing historical facts that are sure to amaze you. Hitler the Junkie. By the end of the war, Adolf Hitler was hooked on drugs. His personal doctor gave him daily injections of amphetamines and other substances to keep him going. These injections became so frequent that Hitler's health declined rapidly, and many believe the drugs played a role in his erratic decision-making during the final months of the war. His paranoia and physical deterioration were likely worsened by his addiction, turning him into a shadow of the feared dictator he once was. The Miracle of Dunkirk. In 1940, one of the most miraculous rescues of the war occurred when over 330,000 Allied soldiers were evacuated from the beaches of Dunkirk, France. The soldiers were trapped by German forces with no way out. In a desperate effort, a makeshift fleet of over 800 boats, including fishing vessels and civilian yachts, was assembled to rescue them. Against all odds, the majority of the stranded troops were brought to safety in what became known as the Miracle of Dunkirk. This dramatic escape kept the Allied war effort alive. Patton's inflatable army. The Allies tricked the Nazis with a fake army led by General Patton. This army was made up of inflatable tanks, fake planes, and wooden artillery, all meant to look real from a distance. The Nazis bought the bluff, believing the invasion would happen in a different location, far from Normandy. This clever ruse, called Operation Fortitude, kept German forces tied up and confused. The deception was so detailed that even fake radio messages were sent, fooling Nazi spies into reporting the wrong invasion plans. Monopoly's Great Escape. During the war, the British used Monopoly boards to sneak escape tools into POW camps. Specially marked game sets had hidden maps, money, compasses, and even tiny files tucked inside the game pieces. These tools helped prisoners plan daring escapes from their German captors. The Nazis never caught on, believing the games were innocent entertainment. Thanks to this clever strategy, many prisoners managed to break free, making Monopoly more than just a game of real estate during World War II. The Chocolate Bomb Plot. The Nazis once tried to kill Winston Churchill with an exploding chocolate bar. Their plan was to coat a bomb with rich, dark chocolate and send it to Churchill, hoping he'd be tempted to take a bite. Luckily, British spies found out about the plot before it could reach him. The explosive treat was never delivered, but the idea of trying to take down a world leader with chocolate sounds more like a spy movie than real life. Japan's floating bombs. Japan launched over 9,000 balloon bombs toward the US during the war, hoping they'd cause fires and panic. The bombs floated across the Pacific, carried by the jet stream. Most landed in remote areas or the ocean, but tragically, one exploded in Oregon, killing a family on a picnic. They were the only US civilians killed by enemy action during World War II. The bombs were meant to create chaos, but their overall effect was limited. Still, it's eerie to think of bombs drifting silently across the sky. Soviet kamikaze dogs. The Soviets had a bizarre plan to stop German tanks, by training dogs to carry bombs. The idea was for the dogs to run under enemy tanks, where the explosives would detonate. But the plan backfired horribly. The dogs, trained on Soviet tanks, often ran back to their own lines, blowing up Soviet equipment instead. The whole project was quickly scrapped, but not before causing some very messy, friendly fire incidents that left the Soviets regretting this strange strategy. Hitler's nephew joined the enemy. Adolf Hitler's own nephew, William Patrick Hitler, fought for the US Navy during World War II. Despite sharing a last name with the Führer, William had no love for his uncle. In fact, he moved to the US and joined the Navy to fight against him. After the war, he changed his last name and faded into obscurity. It's a crazy twist of fate that a member of Hitler's family ended up wearing the uniform of the country, fighting to bring down the Nazi regime. LA's battle with weather balloons. In 1942, panic broke out in Los Angeles when it seemed the city was under attack by Japanese forces. Anti-aircraft guns fired into the night sky for hours, filling the air with explosions. The city went into full-blown defense mode, but the enemy turned out to be weather balloons and possibly nerves. No planes, no bombs, just a false alarm. The event became known as the Battle of Los Angeles, even though there was no real enemy in sight, the Ghost Blimp. In 1942, a U.S. Navy blimp took off on a routine patrol off the coast of California. Hours later, the blimp was found drifting, its crew mysteriously missing. There were no signs of struggle, and the blimp itself was intact. The two-man crew was never found, and no one knows what happened to them. This spooky event became known as the Ghost Blimp, one of the strangest unsolved mysteries of World War II, leaving people to wonder if the men were abducted or disappeared into thin air. The tragic target: Jews in the Holocaust. The group most heavily persecuted by the Nazis were the Jews. During World War II, around 6 million Jewish people were brutally killed in the Holocaust, one of the darkest chapters in human history. Adolf Hitler, driven by his racist ideology, blamed the Jews for Germany's loss in World War I. He spread false claims that they were a threat to German society, using propaganda to turn the public against them. The result was systematic genocide, with Jews being sent to concentration camps and ghettos in a horrific attempt to erase their existence. The U.S. joins after Pearl Harbor attack. The United States stayed out of World War II until 1941, when Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. On December 7th, Japanese planes bombed the base, killing over 2,400 Americans and destroying much of the Pacific Fleet. The very next day, on December 8th, the U.S. declared war on Japan, officially entering the conflict. This move also meant joining the fight against Japan's German allies, drastically changing the course of the war and leading to America's full involvement in World War II. Germany surrenders, then Japan. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered, marking the end of the war in Europe. This came after a long fight, with Allied forces crossing from Britain in 1944 to liberate France from Nazi control. 1 year later, the Allies pushed into Germany, forcing the Nazis to surrender. But the war wasn't fully over until Japan also gave in after 2 devastating nuclear attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. These bombings pushed Japan to surrender, finally bringing World War II to a close after 6 years of global conflict. The deadly toll and shifting powers World War II was the deadliest conflict ever, claiming the lives of between 60 to 80 million people. This staggering number includes about 6 million Jews who were killed by the Nazis during the Holocaust. Out of all the deaths, around 50 to 55 million were civilians, while 21 to 25 million were military personnel. Millions more were injured, and countless families lost their homes and belongings. The war didn't just cause immense loss of life, it also changed the world. After the war, communism spread from the Soviet Union into Eastern Europe and eventually took hold in China. Hitler's failed art career. Before becoming the dictator who would plunge the world into war, Adolf Hitler had dreams of being an artist. In fact, he applied to the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna twice, but was rejected both times. Art critics found his work lacking, and he struggled to make a living as a painter. Hitler blamed Jewish people for many of his failures, and this resentment would later fuel his horrific actions during World War II. It's a chilling thought. How different history might have been had his art career succeeded. The Enigma Machine. Code breakers. Win the day. The Germans believed their secret communications were unbreakable, thanks to the complex Enigma machine used to encode messages. However, brilliant code breakers at Britain's Bletchley Park, including Alan Turing, managed to crack the Enigma code. This breakthrough gave the Allies access to Nazi plans, allowing them to anticipate attacks and adjust their strategies. Many historians believe that breaking Enigma shortened the war by at least 2 years, saving countless lives and giving the Allies a critical edge in the fight against Germany. A war without bananas. One of the strangest food shortages during World War II was bananas. Due to shipping blockades and the need to prioritize essential supplies, Britain went without bananas for 5 years. When the war ended, the first shipment of bananas arrived in 1945, and British children, many of whom had never seen a banana, were astonished. The shortage led to some creative cooking, with people using mashed parsnips as a banana substitute in recipes. The return of the beloved fruit was a small but sweet victory after years of hardship. The Deadly Blitz, London under fire. From 1940 to 1941, the German Luftwaffe launched a relentless bombing campaign known as the Blitz against London and other British cities. For 57 consecutive nights, bombs rained down, destroying buildings and killing tens of thousands of civilians. Despite the destruction, the British people's resolve never wavered. The Deadly Blitz, London under fire. From 1940 to 1941, the German Luftwaffe launched a relentless bombing campaign known as the Blitz against London and other British cities. For 57 consecutive nights, bombs rained down, destroying buildings and killing tens of thousands of civilians. Despite the destruction, the British people's resolve never wavered. Rosie the Riveter. During World War II, millions of women joined the workforce to replace the men who had gone off to fight. Known as Rosie the Riveter, these women worked in factories, building airplanes, tanks, and munitions. For the first time, women were taking on roles that were traditionally male-dominated, helping to fuel the war effort. Rosie became an iconic symbol of female strength and independence, and the shift in gender roles during the war laid the groundwork for the women's rights movements in the decades to come. The Ghost Army of Illusion. The U.S. deployed a secret unit during World War II known as the Ghost Army, consisting of artists, sound engineers, and actors. Their mission? To deceive the Germans by creating fake military units. Using inflatable tanks, fake aircraft, and loudspeakers blasting recorded sounds of troops and machinery, the Ghost Army tricked the Nazis into thinking large forces were positioned where they weren't. This tactical illusion was so convincing that it misled German commanders multiple times, helping the Allies win crucial battles without engaging in direct combat. Operation Mincemeat, the ultimate deception. In one of the most bizarre wartime strategies, the British carried out a secret operation called Mincemeat. They dressed up a corpse as a British officer, planted fake documents on him suggesting the Allies would invade Greece, and allowed the body to wash ashore in Spain. The fake intelligence convinced the Nazis, who redirected their forces away from the real invasion target, Sicily. This strange but brilliant plan contributed to the successful Allied invasion of Italy and became one of the most famous examples of military deception. The Siege of Leningrad. The Soviet city of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, endured one of the longest and most brutal sieges in history. From 1941 to 1944, the Nazis surrounded the city, cutting off supplies and attempting to starve its people into submission. Despite extreme conditions, including bitter winters and severe food shortages that led to widespread famine, the residents of Leningrad refused to surrender. Over 1 million people died during the siege, but the city's resilience became a powerful symbol of Soviet determination and survival during World War II. Hitler's death wasn't the end. When Adolf Hitler committed suicide on April 30, 1945, the war didn't end immediately. Even after his death, many die-hard Nazis continued to fight. In fact, some German units kept resisting for days, either out of loyalty to the regime or disbelief that the war was lost. It took several more days of fierce fighting before Germany finally surrendered on May 8, 1945, marking the official end of World War II in Europe. The news of Hitler's death did not instantly halt the chaos, as remnants of the war still raged on. The Stalingrad Sniper Duel. The Battle of Stalingrad was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, and it featured a legendary sniper duel. Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev became famous for his sharpshooting skills, credited with killing over 200 Germans. The Nazis sent their own top sniper, Major Erwin König, to take Zaitsev out. The two engaged in a tense sniper battle amidst the ruins of Stalingrad, a game of deadly hide-and-seek. After days of hunting each other, Zaitsev eventually outwitted and killed König, making the duel part of Soviet wartime mythology. World War II was filled with unforgettable stories of bravery, tragedy, and even moments of humor. If you enjoyed these wild facts, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing history content.